It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interview. Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Throws, ends it, caught, touchdown, they did it!
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on in to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker. The sun is shining. The Aggies have 20 wins, and they're 10-2 in conference play. It's a good day. It's a good Wednesday here on the Full Court Press. And also, we got to talk some football today. It's always a good day.
Yeah, we're how many months away from actually playing football? Like 6 or 7? What number month is August again?
8th.
This is the 8th month? Yeah, it's the 8th month. So we're... of course, we're at the beginning of February, and they don't play till like the end of August or early September, so it's more like 7 months, essentially.
And traditionally, we get a little glimpse of things sometime in mid to late April with the spring scrimmage. We that may be a luxury we don't get anymore.
Yeah, it might be a luxury that a lot of teams don't get anymore, at least until certain things change with the recruiting windows and transfer portal windows for college football.
Yeah, we'll get into that and what that means. And one prominent coach at a big name school is already made it clear he's not going to do a spring scrimmage. Well, how many other schools will follow suit, and will Utah State follow suit as well? So we'll hear from Bronco Mendenhall later on in the show. He held a press conference earlier today talking about his new recruiting class and really in-depth talk about recruiting and understanding his current roster, trying to decide what the needs are, and then trying to go out and get players to fill those needs to help this team be better. And there's some really interesting things when you look at the roster and this recruiting class that can get someone excited about upcoming Utah State football season. So we'll get into that. We'll hear from the coach. Before we do that, though, we promised at the end of last hour that we would get some of the texts that had come through on the Young Power Sports text line that we weren't able to get to, reacting primarily to Utah State's win over Wyoming last night, picking up another win, a good road win. It was tight. It was close. But, hey, it's a win, and that's important to stay on top or near the top of the conference standings. So 435-339-0321 for those who want to chime in. 8968 sent this in. Had the Aggies made free throws on their average night at the first part of the season, who knows how the New Mexico would have turned out?
Yeah, like the New Mexico game probably comes a lot down to those free throws and three-pointers, because not only does you can just kind of do the math and figure out how the Aggies would have gotten something like 15 more points, give or take, depending on how generous you are with what the Aggies would have shot, either in three-pointers or free throws. But the mental effect and the positive effect it had for New Mexico and forcing, getting those misses and getting out in transition, there's a lot of things that could have gone very, very differently in that game. But they didn't. It's unfortunately, it could have, would have, should have, but it's certainly a thought experiment you can have to feel a little bit better about the loss, because, again, and the thing we emphasize after that loss is it's going to be a bit of a one-off. I don't expect that bad of a loss to happen again, especially not at home.
9315, who do we want to win tonight in the Mountain West? Big showdown between Colorado State and New Mexico. This game being played at Albuquerque. And let's see, is it on national TV? Yes, it's FS1.
It's on FS1. New Mexico favored by 8.5. If you're Utah State, I'd say you probably want Colorado State to win. Eric's over there squirming because it's like, for the good of the conference, For the good of the conference, I want Colorado State to win. Really?
They do not have a quad one win yet. And if the Mountain West wants to try to get 4 teams into the tournament, Colorado State needs to improve its resume. and they are 0-3 in quad 1 games. Tonight is one of those that they could get a quad 1 victory on their resume. They have been inching up and continuing to improve in the net rankings steadily since these ratings were released. They started out at 205 when the ratings were released. Today, they're sitting at 75. So they've had a big improvement as the season has gone on. And if they want to improve their resume, tonight would be a really important game for them to get there.
I don't know. I think they're a little too far out. They're not getting into the tournament. They're just not. So you're just lowering New Mexico's chances of getting in, because that's a quad 2 loss for them.
It would be a quad 2 loss for New Mexico, but
could end up being quad 3, because Colorado State hasn't played a lot of the better teams. Like, they haven't played Utah State once. They still have some other tough games. So I don't know, if you're looking for the good of the conference, you want New Mexico to win.
But New Mexico still has a decent resume, whereas Colorado State needs to boost theirs.
Yeah, but if New Mexico loses, then their resume gets worse, and so they've just worked themselves over the fringe. If they take another loss, they're going to work their way back into the fringe.
Well, and selfishly, it helps Utah State.
Well, yeah, let's just say if you're a Utah State fan, you forget for the good of the conference, you want Colorado State to win, because that is better for Utah State. That's the point I'm making there. Is I think for the good of the conference, you want New Mexico to win, because at this point, you want Utah State and New Mexico to basically win most of their games, and pray that somebody else can maybe make it or I guess you want San Diego State. Like, you want those 3 teams to be winning most of their games, because those are your NCAA tournament teams. Everyone else is probably just too far gone, barring completely winning out. So those are the 3 teams you want to win a bunch. But if you're Utah State, Colorado State winning would help the Aggies control their destiny a little bit better, because they can't win a tiebreaker against New Mexico. So even though mathematically they could force a tie no matter what New Mexico does, if they're able to win at the pit, this would help a little bit more, because then if the Aggies were to, again, controlling your fate and winning out, even though that's not going to happen, mathematically it can, you would control your destiny entirely if Colorado State wins this game. Because then even if New Mexico won out, minus the Utah State game, the Aggies could jump ahead if they also won out. Barring that one match. I say winning out, and then I'm assuming one team loses. That's not winning out, but trying to get that point across. So it would help the Aggies slightly more, I think, if Colorado State wins, but it's not huge one way or the other, especially with so much of the regular season left, and the fact that the Aggies aren't going to win out. So we can't be doing these calculations this far away from the end of the season.
Way too much basketball to be played. 3714 texting in, looking for a moment toward the future of Aggie basketball. Is it unrealistic for Aggie fans to hope that Utah State basketball could become a Gonzaga, and that Jared Calhoun might hang around and become the Mark Few of that scenario? That would probably require an even greater commitment by the Aggie administration, but my question is, would that be an unrealistic dream?
To become a Gonzaga, that's a little unrealistic, because Gonzaga is to the point where they're not really considered a mid-major anymore. Mind you, they're kind of down from a peak over, kind of the early 2020s, where they were recruiting future top 5 picks in the draft. And they were routinely number 1 seed, number 2 seed, making the Sweet 16 guaranteed every year. Mind you, they're still good this year, but instead of being top 5 in the country, they're only top 25. And I forget exactly where they're at in the latest rankings, but still a good team, but not elite. But it's an elite program overall. And I just don't know if the Aggies can really reach that, because, again, we're talking about the Aggies basically becoming a power conference team outside of a power conference. The more comfortable one would be something the Aggies are actually already fairly close to. They just don't have the NCAA tournament resume, but that would be a San Diego State, where they've had longtime coaches, longtime success, a lot of conference championships, enough respect that, they don't really suffer from the, Mountain West bias from the committee. The other Mountain West teams, they'll get shafted in their seeding. San Diego State doesn't really. With all the struggles they've had, they're still considered a tournament team because they have the pedigree and the respect.
Performed. Yeah.
And so And so even in a bit of a down year, they're still a tournament team. They're still a team that people will believe, and they have good reason to believe that they can make a bit of a run in the NCAA tournament. So that's a more realistic, I think, benchmark for the Aggies to get to. And as I said, I think they're fairly close to that. Like, and if they get Jared Calhoun to stick around a lot, because the thing that's really hampered them is that all of these coaches that have taken them to multiple titles and whatnot in the last 6 or so years, they're not sticking around long term to, build on their own success at Utah State. Somebody else has to come in and restart that, or kind of, again, more likely like reload, because they're not really restarting or rebuilding. They're just coming in and winning and then leaving. Like that process keeps happening over and over. If Jared Calhoun sticks around for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, you definitely see the Aggie, and if he continues to recruit and win on a similar pace that he is this year, you'd see them become a team that is more recognized nationally. They'd at some point have a Sweet 16 run. Who knows if they can go longer, because so much goes into a run like that, and a ton of it can be luck, to be quite honest. But you'd look at that, they'd end up becoming a program on the caliber of San Diego State, if not even a little bit better. Although it's hard to beat what San Diego State has done, where they've literally made a national championship.
Yeah. So they're how many Gonzagas are there? How many situations are there where you've got a mid-major program that has a coach that's there for a long time, that regularly does deep runs into the top or into the NCAA tournament, or time in the top 25? And I think you just identified one, which is San Diego State. How many other are there besides that? Yeah, I could probably find one or two, but it'd be hard. And so my point is that it's extremely rare. I know everybody wants to be the next Gonzaga, but when Craig Smith was here, we saw what was happening and thought, he's got a young family. He acts like he likes Cache Valley. It's a great home for him. He can see success here. This will be our next tomorrow. It will be Gonzaga in the Mountain West. And he left.
And he left for a program down the street.
And Ryan Odom comes in. He's got a youngish family. He's got kids that are playing on the local high school team. The Aggies are having success. Maybe a little bit more of a stretch because this guy came from the East Coast and he's not from the general Western United States. But maybe, but then he left. Okay, then Danny Sprinkle comes in. Here's a guy from Montana. Like, this guy is closer to home than anybody. Yeah. He's played here. He's coached against the Aggies here. I mean, this guy understands what this area, geography, conference, he understands. Like, I mean, he's young. He's probably going to be here for a long time. And it lasted a season. So I would love to say that I believe it's possible. But the track record and the era of college sports shows us painfully that it's not. And it is very unique. And while I'm sure the Utah State administration would love to try to keep a coach around to have that level of sustained success, it is so incredibly hard. And it's not a knock against these coaches. It's not a knock against the administration. It's just that's where Utah State is in the pecking order of the college athletics at large.
Yeah. But the hope is that, like, there are still coaches who stick around long term. Your Leon Rice's, your Brian Dutcher's. Like, I think there is a chance the Aggies eventually find their long term coach. We just aren't going to know who it is until you end up getting them here for 5-10 years.
Could it be Jared Calhoun? Maybe. I mean, his first year he got the Aggies to 20 wins already. And there's still a month of basketball. Yeah. So, yeah, I like what I see so far. Could he be that guy? Maybe. And it'd be great because he would have a lot of years to give. Am I expecting him to be gone next year? No. But am I expecting him to be here in 5 years? I'd be surprised.
Yeah, just because, most coaches don't last 5 years. So that's just kind of the way it is. One way or another, they either get fired or get poached. And that's kind of the life of a mid-major. But the move to the Pac-12 is probably the biggest thing because that's a material change. There's more money, and you have a better chance. Like, if you're paying a coach close-ish to what they can kind of make, what they can make, you're never going to match that. But if you can come close-ish, and prove to Jared Calhoun you have the resources, because that's one of the biggest things. When they move up, it's better pay and better resources to succeed. Obviously, it's a much tougher challenge, and it's why a lot of them actually don't end up succeeding, even with the higher pay and higher resources. But if you can convince Calhoun, like, look, the resources are here, and if the pay is close-ish, then it's just up to him, whether or not he wants that extra million or so and the boost in NIL, which those are very attractive things to draw coaches away. It's why the Aggies haven't held on to a coach. And it could very easily draw Jared Calhoun away. And that's just the way it is.
See, 1181 texting in, USU won't ever be Gonzaga, and the texter shouldn't blame USU administration. Sabo is committed. USU fans need to commit to NIL, or it won't happen with the way the NCAA is now.
I don't know if anybody was blaming the administration. It's just the nature of being in a mid-major program. Money talks, and it's why mid-majors have a hard time hanging on to their coaches, because they don't have the money. And that's just the way it is. And yeah, as far as committing to NIL, yes, that is partially a solution, but at this point, you're chasing a ghost. Every coach says, "Oh, we need more NIL." And the administration begs for NIL, and every game you go to, they're begging for NIL. To put it bluntly, you will never be anywhere close to what the other programs, because every time you do a campaign to raise more NIL, that's exactly what all other 364 college basketball teams are doing, and all the other 134 football teams are doing. You're this extra commitment that's really just maintaining pace with everyone else, which makes it necessary. I don't want to act like it's defeatist and say you can't be donating anyway, but it's like the Aggies aren't going to magically just become one of the better NIL destinations. That's just not going to happen.
No, I mean, just look at the geography, the size of the fan base. It's not at the same level as some of these other ones.
Yeah, they're already punching way above their weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6391 texting in, I'd rather keep losing coaches due to success than to have one coach for a long time with a mid-team.
Yeah, that's kind of
that's where I'm at.
And honestly, there's kind of a danger, because one of the things is you don't want to get too overeager with a coach as well, because how many times has a guy walked in, had early success, and then turned out to be kind of a mid-coach? Hasn't really happened to Utah State, but I've seen it happen to a lot of other teams. And so that's the kind of thing you worry. Utah State's been just really weird in that coaches just tend to be good here. Even before Stu Morrill, after, Tim Duryea is kind of the one kind of dud that you had, and even he was around 500 most years. The reason he was fired is because he let go is because he wasn't living up to the Stu Morrill standard, and obviously other coaches have shown that they've had success since. So, the Aggies haven't necessarily had the problem of signing a coach to a long-term contract that ended up being a dud, but you got to be careful. Because I've seen it in both football and basketball, where a coach has one big season, you hand him a 10-year contract, and suddenly he's not that good.
Yeah.
And you hope that Jared Calhoun isn't that, but sometimes it can be beyond their control. Sometimes coaches get lucky in one year, and they can't retain the luck in the next years.
Right, because they can coach the leftover players really well, but getting new players and replicating that same success, they just struggle with that. All right, we got to take the time out. We're a little overdue with our original topic to lead the hour, talking about football. But of course, it's great getting the interaction on the Young Power Sports text line 435-339-0321. Aggies got a nice win last night over Wyoming to stay on near the top of the conference standings. But also a big day today for Utah State football. Bronco Mendenhall met with the media and talked about the latest recruiting class for the Utah State football team. What he had to say about that, and interesting thoughts about tampering that he had to share, and how that may affect how fans interact with the team this spring. So we'll update you on all that coming up on the Full Court Press.
Cold weather is here. Let the gold medal winner in the Best of Northern Utah's fireplace category help you update your home with Heat and Glow's full line of gas or wood-burning products. Building a new home? Let the professionals at Advanced Fireplace and Stove design and install your fireplace. From traditional to modern, Heat and Glow has something for every design and every budget. Install a product that will allow your family to make memories for years to come. Stop by at their showroom or visit them at advancedfireplaceandstove.com.
The perfect night, the perfect date, the perfect Valentine's dinner for two at Cafe Sabor. You choose the night, Monday, February 10th through Saturday, February 15th. Then comes the amazing Valentine's dinner. 4 options priced $25, $30, $35, and $45. You can also include a movie for two. No excuses. 5 days to make your Valentine happy, 10th through the 15th, with 4 amazing specials to choose from, including a movie at Cache Valley's favorite Mexican restaurant, Cafe Sabor. Go to cafesabor.com for details. cafesabor.com for details on the Sweetheart Special.
This Valentine's Day, give a piece of jewelry from S.E. Needham Jewelers. Save time and money by taking advantage of our Valentine's Day special. With the purchase of any jewelry valued at $149 or more, you'll receive dinner for two, chocolates and flowers. You can have Valentine's Day covered in one stop. Choose from a large selection of diamonds, pearls, gold, and silver jewelry. Also, your jewelry will come in our signature gift box. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 7. S.E. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block at the sign of the clock.
This is Catherine Buse with Cache Valley Bank, and we understand that concerns about fraud can weigh heavily on you. Your peace of mind is important to us. That's why we're committed to looking out for you and your family. Our team keeps a vigilant eye on your account. If you ever have concerns or need support, we're just a call or visit away. Whether you need advice or just someone to talk to, our friendly staff is ready to help. We're more than just a bank. We're your neighbors, and we care about your security. Visit your local branch today. Cache Valley Bank, member FDIC.
The Aggies, Jazz, high schools, even the Pee Wee's T-ball team. It's the Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, The Fan.
Get yourself ready for the largest and most complete power sports repair shop in northern Utah. Young Power Sports will get your machine in and out with under 3-day diagnosis guarantee. Any brand, any problem at Young Power Sports. They've also got great deals going on. Snowmobiles at blowout prices at 1903 South, 800 West in Logan. They sponsor the Full Court Press text line, and a number of texts coming through. We'll clear that deck before we move on to football. But 6391 texting in, talking about the payouts from the coaches getting poached keeps paying for the next coach's raise.
I think a lot of those paid for Bronco's salary, to be honest.
That's true. And then 8968 texting in, he was not that recent, but I don't know if Con Smith ever did better than even in the years he was here. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's been some periods of some mediocre coaches, but
it's not like it's been
constant.
constant.
The last 40 years, and more often than not, Utah State has had successful basketball.
Yeah, like Stacy, pretty solid. I mean, from the the 60s into the early 70s, they late 60s, early 70s, they were great.
Yeah, Liddell Anderson
into the kind of late 80s, early 90s, and obviously then into the 2000s. They were great. Mid 2010s obviously weren't that great, but in the late 2010s, early 2020s, they've been fantastic. So there's only been a couple of lulls in like the 80s and 2010s and maybe late 70s. Actually, they may have been good in the late 70s. I'd have to go back and double check, but I know there's been a couple of lulls, but not that many.
Yeah, not very many. So, yeah, Utah State basketball is performed at a very high level and once again hit 20 wins. And that is a significant mark in college basketball when you get to 20 wins. But let's shift our gears to talk about football for a moment. There have been maybe more lulls in football than there have been in basketball.
Yeah, a few too many.
Yeah.
It was like a 50-year one.
But But Bronco Mendenhall has come in hoping to turn things around quickly for Utah State, a team that's really not that far removed from competing for the Mountain West Conference Championship and trying to get back to a position where they can do that again. But the team that went through a lot of turmoil last year, and he's trying to come in and solidify a few things. But in the process of doing that, they really had to kind of assess what they had, and just trying to figure out where this team is at, what the roster is, what the recruits coming in look like. And that was one of the early things that this coaching staff spent a lot of time doing. It's kind of evaluating the needs of this team, so they had an idea of where to go in the future.
We're tilted slightly more defensively than offensively in terms of numbers needed and in terms of quality. And so you'll see, I think we signed 19 defensive players, 14 offensive players. And the very first thing we did, and you probably already know this, but we spent 4 days doing nothing other than our staff morning to night evaluating the current Utah State roster when we arrived. So that was 4 days, every position, every player, some that weren't playing, looking at either junior college or high school film, as well as looking at the existing signees that Utah State had. So we went through that our entire roster, knowing also that I was with a program that played against Utah State a year ago. So we went back and dove through all of our notes and looked at those evaluations also. That then helped us frame the needs for Utah State, again, slightly more defensively than offensively. Some had changed already because of players entering the portal, right? So it wasn't just we're looking at last year's team. It was last year's team now with portal players leaving also, addressing that, and then also addressing it in relation to a league we just became familiar with, which helped us be more accurate. And so really that's what I would frame to this point.
36 players added in this recruiting class, and something he touched on earlier too. And there were years past where he'd have a recruiting season of 15 guys. Yeah, that's 36 this year.
Yeah, that's what it used to be. You'd pick up like a dozen or so high school players because you'd have a dozen or so guys graduate, and then in the later years you might pick up a transfer, or you pick up some JUCO guys. But yeah, now it's classes of 30, 40. We're probably gonna have a class of 50 at some point. Heaven knows. But yeah, as Bronco was saying, skewing more towards the defensive side, because while the offense did lose like basically everyone in the starting lineup, they held on to a lot of the depth from last year's team. A lot of backup receivers, backup offensive linemen, backup quarterbacks. Like, they held on to a decent amount there. Whereas the defense was like the entire 2 deep. Heck, half like the entire 3 deep.
Yeah.
Either graduating or transferring.
Yeah. Decimated.
So they needed to basically rebuild that defense essentially from scratch. It was like Gabe Iniguez and Ike Larson, and that was basically it for guys coming back who had any amount of experience playing. So they needed to bring in a lot of guys. Bronco brought in like 7 guys from New Mexico, most of those on the defensive side. And then, bringing in a lot of junior college guys, a lot of whom were, of the junior college guys, they brought in 7 junior college guys. 6 of them are on the defensive side. So they're bringing in guys to rebuild that defense. They have work to do on the offense. They brought in a lot of good wide receivers. Some of them freshmen who may not play right away, but they brought in some guys who can be potential impact guys as wide receivers, who are Division I transfers. Brought in some running backs to rebuild the running back room that just got completely decimated with Faison and Briggs both gone. So, and they brought in a quarterback to compete with Bryson Barnes for that starting job. So they've addressed kind of a lot of the glaring needs, and at this point it's now just more evaluation, more figuring out what they have, and something in there's a clip of this where Bronco's like talking about where they've addressed the needs, but then now they need to figure out depth. That's kind of the new key, is do they have the depth? That's the next big question.
Yeah, and I think this clip answers that.
I know everyone want to know how we're going to be and to project. What I would say at this point is our needs have been addressed based on our evaluation to this point. And so that sounds short of promising, which it is. And so I'll put it in context for you. As we arrived in the hiring of my timing, that was after finals, so the team was gone. Right, there were just a handful of players still here, which I was able to see in person. Transfer portal opens. We recruit the transfer portal. Again, school starts here the 6th of January. Players have to be enrolled by the second week. Basically, our transfer and our portal recruiting was open and closed before we saw our team in person and before we saw them work out. And so everything we've done now based on film, gosh, we addressed those needs as best we could, which I think we did really well. Now that we've seen our team work out and been with them and the personalities and the chemistry, I'm excited about the grit, the determination, the toughness, competitive spirit of this team, with still probably a handful of needs we still have remaining. And so we haven't perfectly addressed our needs, but the majority we have, and maybe 4 or 5 player or spots remaining, I think we still might need to address post-spring. That would be barring any more attrition from our program, either through the off-season or spring practice. I think we did really well. And I like the players we've added. I like the needs we've addressed. I like the roster we have, again, with a handful of existing needs still remaining.
Yeah, that was a question last hour. How many more spots need to be filled, or what needs still need to be addressed? And there's Bronco saying about 4 or 5. And as you said, maybe it's in another clip. I can't remember now at this point. But he basically saying, yeah, the thing that they just need to figure out now is what's our depth look like? Like you can see what a roster is based on going over the film and making the visits, but until you have them in pads going against the other guys on your roster, that's where you really start to separate like who can really cut it right now and who still needs more development. And that's why these next few months are going to be really important for the Aggies.
Yeah, and I was trying to draw out of him because he mentioned addressing some of the needs and still have some needs. I was trying to draw out of him like if there was a position group that he felt like was still needing, and he saw through the question and dodged it. So I didn't get the answer I was kind of hoping for, like maybe a specific position group that he was looking to address. But as he kind of said, like, and maybe it's not as complicated as him dodging a question, but he talked about where like it's not so much that there is a position group that they just don't have a guy, it's do they have the depth? And I think that's kind of where he went with the question.
Yeah, and this, again, kind of on a similar theme, but this was another point in the press conference where he kind of discussed this theme of figuring out what he has, what he needs to bring in, and still trying to figure out what he's got.
I think we've addressed all the areas that were needs. The question will remain, are we deep enough? And so the remaining spots are not areas we haven't addressed. And quite frankly, I won't be able to tell you for sure until we actually play. And I'm talking spring practice on how well we truly addressed our needs. But every position that we needed was addressed in a comprehensive way. Are we deep enough? That really is the question. So the handful of needs remaining will be possibly adding another player, right, for what the season will take its toll on, and to make sure that we can stay healthy enough with the quality we need to have the results we want.
Yeah, so that was his response to me trying to draw more specifically if there were any areas that he felt like hadn't been addressed yet. So they've gotten players at pretty much every position. Like go down the list of all the positions, they have someone. They have someone that you can at least be reasonably confident can probably play at whatever position you're looking at. The question is that player going to be good enough? Is there going to be enough depth at that position, like a quarterback? If Anthony Garcia isn't good enough, then like, is it Bryson Barnes or bust? Like you might only have one starting caliber quarterback next season if Anthony Garcia isn't good enough to challenge Barnes for that spot. Like, you brought in guys like Miles Davis, Javen Jacobs, like are both of them going to be productive running backs along with some of the guys you're bringing back? They brought in a boatload of guys in the secondary, so I hope they're deep enough at that position. Like that's kind of the one position group I think they are deep at. But I think the biggest one that I think they haven't addressed a ton, they have some returning guys. on the offensive. That's the position group I'm looking at. The offensive line. They brought in like one Division I transfer, Jake Eichhorn. I don't know how to say that last name.
From BYU?
Yeah, from BYU. It's either Eichhorn or Eichhorn. I don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce that CH.
Eichhorn.
Is it? Is that how?
That's a pronunciation guide on the release. Yeah, Eichhorn.
Does it not have that like little sound in it?
Apparently not.
How would you like put that in words or whatever?
Make the
like a pronunciation
sound.
guide. You got to make that. Anyway, that tangent aside, they did bring in Kamuta Lavasa from Cerritos College, another offensive lineman. They brought in a couple, but depth at offensive line is going to be a huge question, I think. Last year, they were pretty solid on the offensive line, and they had pretty solid depth as well. They went 7 or 8 deep. They were pretty solid in their depth, but they lost the entire starting offensive line. So you got to start over. Again, they have a couple of guys, George Miley, Tavumoto Apuaka, I think is still around. I can't remember. But they have a couple of guys, but they got to rebuild an entire offensive line. And so if I had to guess, I know Bronco wasn't specific, but if I had to guess, this is probably one of the biggest areas where it's like, this is one where they've kind of addressed it, but you really got to figure out the depth. But they did also have a couple of pretty solid freshman recruits from last year on the offensive line who will have redshirted last year, who maybe they'll step in their redshirt freshman year. So that's maybe something where they're going to do a lot of evaluating, where they have a lot of unknowns on the offensive line, and they're going to have to wait. Like, if they turn out to be good, they could have a solid offensive line, but it could just as easily fall the other way, and suddenly they have no experienced offensive linemen, no guys who are ready, and they could be in deep trouble.
8968 texting in. Just think, if they keep all 36 players to stay, you guys will be just might be able, to fill out your top 25 players for the Aggies next fall.
Yeah, we had, how many players ended up? I guess there was only one that had to be like pretty much completely excised. Micah Davis.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there was another one that was obviously a tragedy. He died. That was I suddenly forget his name. The New Mexico State transfer at cornerback.
Yes.
Andre Selden.
Yes.
He was like number 24, 23. But yeah, I think him and Micah Davis were the only ones we had to pull completely out. Of course, we still noted Andre Selden, obviously. Micah, we just kind of skipped. We were like, we're skipping number 4, guys.
Yeah.
At least I think he's 4 or 5 or something.
He was up there. He was in the top 5.
Yeah, but we of course, heaven knows, it gets harder and harder every year to do a top 25. Like, first year we did it, it was like, there were like 32 or 33 players total, like on everyone's ballots. And now we're up to like 40 because like nobody knows.
Because you're just taking shots in the dark on some of these guys.
Especially on the back end of your top 25. We can all get our top 10 down pretty well. But this year, that still might be hard because there's barely anybody returning.
9315 with a question, and we'll hear the coach's answer. Sounds like spring practice and trying to move spring enrollment back coming to USU football. Did I hear that right? Oh, spring enrollment, that's not a football question.
But also
meaning
about
closed practices.
Talking about closed practices. And that does bring us to the point where there are a few questions asked to Bronco Mendenhall, particularly in reference to Matt Rule over at Nebraska, right?
Yeah.
Where, for them, they have a spring game that draws like tens of thousands.
It's a significant moneymaker.
They sell tickets. Like for Utah State, it's like, please come.
Right.
Hold a family fun day, and they can draw a decent crowd on a Saturday in the spring or in the fall. But for these big programs, they make money, and Matt Rule's like, we're not going to do it because he lost like several key players to the transfer portal after doing a spring game where hidden among those like 60,000 people were a few scouts from other teams who then decided, hey, we like that player, and then they have some third party say, hey, enter the transfer portal and we'll give you this, and boom, they're gone.
Yeah.
And Utah State lost several guys after spring ball.
Yeah, they did.
Several like key players, because it wasn't several of their quarterbacks. Well, like Cooper Legal was expected, but then McKay Hillstead.
Mm-hmm.
I think Paul Fitzgerald was after the spring game. I can't remember if he was before or after.
I think he was before the spring game, but it was in the spring.
Yeah, like Micah Davis was also in the spring. And I think there were some other defensive players who transferred around the spring game. So it's like they lost some key guys after the spring game.
Yes, they did.
So that was, and that's something that you have to worry about, especially if you're a mid-major program where you are a prime target for bigger programs to just poach players, to walk up, say, we'll give you $100,000 and you can come transfer to us. And there's diddly jack that the Aggies can do about it, because they can barely offer, like they probably can't even offer $100,000 to their stars, let alone some of their middling starters that other programs poach to go be their third string on their Power 5 program.
Yeah, so a coach is having to shield his players from the world when he should be trying to showcase them to the local fans. And here's what Bronco Mendenhall had to say about tampering and how it could affect this annual spring scrimmage.
So there are rules that are supposed to be governing tampering, but they're not enforced. They're not enforced effectively, and they're having very little impact on the decisions made. So tampering is widespread, and it is occurring. And so am I concerned about having an open scrimmage for opponents to show up, or the national landscape to send personnel here to watch that and then simply buy our players? Certainly. And so, yes, I'll consider what our spring practice might look like in terms of a spring game. I'd love, to generate momentum and excitement for Utah State football, to connect with the community. I might move that to the fall, right before the season starts, something like that, where the roster, can be solidified without the risk that we're talking about. Because I would love our fans and those that support our program to see our team. I now have to manage that in the context of what's best for the program with a spring window. And I think most are referring to Matt Rule at Nebraska talking about, that experience, losing 6 players after their spring game. There's really nothing that's preventing anyone that's looking for players or has an interest in one of our players to show up to the spring game, assess them again in real time with their eyes on them, and then here's the window, and then offer them, and then try to have them leave for their program. So yes, it's a concern. Yes, we'll address it. How, I'm not quite sure yet, but I'll do so in the way that's best for our team and best for our community and best for our fans.
So he didn't outright say there would be no spring scrimmage, but it felt like that's the direction he's leaning.
Yeah,
and he outlines his reasons.
It's something that he's definitely going to consider.
Which he's not alone.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of programs that don't do a spring game until or unless they get rid of the spring window. Because that's the thing that'll save your spring games and spring showcases and maybe more open spring practices, is getting rid of that spring window, which there is momentum. Like, coaches clearly don't like it. And when the coaches are mad about something, that's a big driver of change, because obviously they have a very direct input in the process. Heck, wasn't it a coaches committee or representative body that submitted a proposal to get rid of the spring window and shift the winter portal into January?
Yeah.
Whether or not shifting the winter portal into January happens is something that may or may not happen because of how it interacts with academics. But getting rid of the spring window is something I could very much see happening. Granted, the transfer portal may be dying anyway because a player has already moved without entering the portal. Like, the portal may not be a thing anymore.
Yeah, that's true. We got to get on the timeout here in the Full Court Press, but still love to hear from you. Well, as we also hear from the coach, your thoughts and reactions to Bronco Mendenhall revealing his latest and newest recruiting class for Utah State football. We'll continue to discuss and hear from him next here on the Full Court Press.
Happy winter. This is Mark at the Sportsman on Main Street, where we make winter fun. We are your ski, snowboard, snowshoe, and cross-country ski rental shop. Come in and rent for the day or longer and have a great time outside. We also have great deals on new skis, boots, bindings, underwear, and outerwear, so you are comfortable playing in the snow. See the Sportsman for the best deals, the best service, and most unique products you will find for the outdoors. Only at the Sportsman on Main Street in downtown Logan.
Spend less time at the post office. With Formax and Mint mailing systems from Les Olson IT, you can quickly, accurately, and easily process your outgoing mail and even save on postage. Fold your documents, stuff and seal your envelopes, print addresses, weigh and measure to apply proper postage, all with the click of a button. With multiple model options available, you're sure to find a Formax solution and Mint mailing device that perfectly fits your business needs.
Les Olson IT.
Hi, this is Ashley with LSS Insurance. Medicare can seem complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Let us help. We'll answer all your questions and get you specific information that fits your needs. Medicare is not one size fits all. We'll help you find the right coverage for you. Call 752-9493. You can ignore the TV and the junk mail. We'll get you the exact information you need. We will help you access the benefits that are important to you. Call LSS Insurance at 752-9493.
They never could play it, but they sure can talk about it. Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker on the Full Court Press.
Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker, 435-339-0321. If you want to react to Bronco Mendenhall's comments today, 931.5 saying, I thought I heard that most schools start 2 weeks after USU. Don't make it harder on Bronco with the transfer getting enrolled in time.
Yeah, it's possible. I don't know the academic schedules of other schools. I don't even know the academic schedule of Utah State, to be perfectly honest. I don't know when they stop. The only thing I know about their calendar is they have spring break the same week of the Mountain West Conference tournament. That's the only thing I know about them at this point. And I think they start classes a week after the first football game.
But yeah, football calendar is not going to affect the academic
because of
enrollment calendar.
The transfer portals, like getting guys transferred to Utah State, enrolled in time to participate in spring ball. That's a challenge with bringing in junior college and four-year guys is getting them in on time to be around, because they got to be enrolled to be there for spring ball. So it can make it a little harder, especially with when he came in. He barely had any time to get anybody in because boom, boom, bang, the second after he's, sent the moving truck into Logan, he's, enrollment's already started and he can't get in guys soon enough.
22 of the 36 are currently enrolled for this spring semester.
So they managed to get a lot.
That's big.
Yeah,
They
managed to get a lot of them, and that's kind of the trend these days. Is you get a lot of guys enrolled for spring. There aren't too many that don't enroll by spring. You obviously have some, and obviously a lot of the high school guys can enroll for spring. Sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't. But yeah, and that's kind of the new norm because everyone transfers in the winter window. So it's kind of how it ends up being.
With this class, something that he emphasized is that he ideally would like to have it more high school player heavy, use the transfer portal to just find immediate needs to fill specific holes. This year's class didn't quite go that way, but you can tell that he is leaning in on high school players, 12 high school players in this class. And then overall, 11 players in this class come from the state of Utah. And even more specifically, a couple of kids close to home. One who played at Skyview, took a little bit of a long route to get to Utah State, to go into Snow College. That's Titan Saxton. And then another one in Bear River, Titan Jones. And both of those guys were going to go to New Mexico, but they are following Bronco and staying close to home.
Yeah, love Titan, and he's tough, he's aggressive, he's productive, and he's experienced. And we needed that at safety. So again, the production, certainly the experience, as well as the mindset. And anytime you can have a player of that caliber and have someone locally as well, that's amazing for the community. It's amazing for the family and the families, but it's also amazing for our team. And so, I would love for every player, Cache Valley specific, that is productive and capable, right, that they stay. And they were the first schools I visited. Again, Titan had committed to us at New Mexico, came with us now to Utah State, which I'm so thankful for. And gosh, in terms of our Bear River player, which is just right around the corner as well, what a great player. Same thing, we wanted We wanted him at New Mexico as well, and it kind of came down to Utah State. So we ended up kind of coming to him rather than vice versa. And physical and athletic and tough and productive. If every good player in this valley stays at Utah State, to me, that's the epitome of what Utah State is. And then we expand that simple circle that starts in Cache Valley throughout the entire state. And again, that could be up to 17 players, maybe more, out of this state per year. The quality of high school football in the state, the number of players that are qualified, that doesn't mean we're compromising quality. We're getting great players that fit in line with our program. When you can go to Bear River and Skyview or Snow College as well, that makes it even better.
Yeah, it's a big emphasis, and always has been when you look at his resume and what he's done when he is coached in the state of Utah. He wants to get Utah kids on his rosters.
Yeah, and there are great players out of the state of Utah. Utah doesn't produce as many. Like, you can't fill an entire roster out of players from the state of Utah like Manny Martins can up with his soccer program. Other states like California and Texas produce a lot, but there are good players here. Ike Larson, go down the list. You can find good players from the state of Utah. Yeah, there are a lot of guys you can get from this state. They've picked up some great in-state recruits on the offensive and defensive line. And now they've always picked up a linebacker and a safety. So they can find good players, and you want to keep them here in Cache Valley if you can. Obviously, if they're like a 4 or 5 star recruit, like got Crew Jones in here, Emily Skinner, it's harder to keep those guys around because they're getting big offers. But talented players that can make an impact in the Mountain West, you want to keep here. You don't want them going somewhere else.
We're going to take another time out, and we need to say goodbye to Jason. He's headed to call a high school basketball game tonight.
Yeah, speaking of high schools.
So, yeah, we're going to let him go. But we've got a few more things we'll hear from Coach Mendenhall as he announced the 36 players in the 2025 signing class. We'll discuss that next on the Full Court Press.
Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent with Alpine Home Medical. This is a story that came to us from a real customer, and I wanted to share it with you.
We came in looking for a scooter for our mother. The staff at Alpine showed us different options for scooters and battery-operated wheelchairs and helped us find one that was easy for her to handle and easy for us to get in and out of her car. They have fabulous customer service.
We love hearing about your experiences. Visit us online at alpinehomemedical.com.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
Many Aggie fans like to go to the game. Some fans love to yell at the TV, and all fans like to wear a shirt or a jacket with their favorite team's logo. Aggie fans find the best selection of USU logoed apparel at Locker 42. Find yourself an Aggie t-shirt for $10. Locker 42 features Aggie logoed hoodies, jackets, and golf shirts, and a hat wall with over 40 styles. Women's specific apparel, youth sizes for the junior Aggie, and toddler and infant Aggie items as well. Locker 42 is a store for Utah State fans by Utah State fans, and proud to be part of Aggie Nation.
Hi, Cache Valley. This is Dan Newmeyer at Blue Sky Restoration, formerly ARS. Do you know what to do if you are experiencing water flooding inside your home? First, make sure everyone is safe, turn off the water, and call Blue Sky. Do you know where the water shutoff is at in your home? If you don't, call Blue Sky and we'll send out a representative for free to help you find it and tag it so you can be prepared if an emergency arises. Remember Blue Sky, restoring your property and your life for a brighter tomorrow.
What do Valentine's Day and Jarek's have in common? They're both all about the romance. Jarek's Fine Jewelry has a great selection for your sweetheart. Don't sweat it out worrying about where to get the perfect gift. We've recently added a 3D laser engraver. Now through Valentine's, Jarek's will personalize any jewelry purchase for no additional charge. We can engrave a wedding date, a name, or any message on most jewelry, like a pendant, watch, bracelet, the inside or outside of a ring. This Valentine's, let us help personalize your gift and make it special. Make it Jarek's.
The Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen here with you, and Utah State football announcing its 2025 signing class. 36 signees, 22 already enrolled. 19 of those 36 are on the defensive side. But one of note on the offensive side is transfer quarterback Anthony Garcia coming to Utah State from Arizona. But there's definitely a connection between Garcia and Utah State. And Coach Mendenhall is pretty excited about that. Not guaranteeing he's going to be the starter, but likes the connection and the history between Garcia and his coaches.
The quarterbacks are, whether anyone says it out loud, is the most important position on the team and determines trajectory more than, maybe even the head coach. So Anthony Garcia, for our fans and for others that haven't researched him already, was at San Jose State. So Coach McGivern had experience with him. The coaching staff at San Jose State goes to the University of Arizona. Anthony Garcia goes to Arizona, remains or was as a backup player there. Arizona's quarterback choosing to stay. Coach McGivern comes to Utah State. Anthony Garcia then comes from Arizona to be here. And so what I love about that is the history and the vetting and the person and the player. All that has been known and seen. And when that happens, there aren't any misses. Does that mean he's our starter? That's not what it means. But it does mean we know what we're getting. And he knows what he's getting with a coach and a system that he's already committed to once. And so for both parties, that could be really powerful. I like our quarterback room. I think we're deep, and I think we're competitive. And that gives our program a great chance to have success. So I'm really excited about him.
Yeah, I was excited about all the quarterbacks, and they didn't go out and actively recruit a lot of quarterbacks. So I think that signifies that in their evaluations, they like what they have and didn't feel like they needed to go and get a lot out on the open market. The other thing that he likes what he's getting in this class, this is a coach that likes to get players who are long, tall, lengthy kind of guys that can be used in different situations. And recruiting length and size to his to this roster for this upcoming season.
Yeah, I love length and size, so I'm glad you picked up on that, especially on the defensive side, but also offensive skill. Length and size, especially, again, I'll talk defensively first. So really good defensive players, they beat blocks and make tackles. Rarely is someone unblocked in the world of college football to make a play. So the good players, right, when unblocked, make a plays. The great ones can beat blocks and make plays. The longer and the further away an opponent is away from you, you can keep them away from you, the more chance you have to get off the block and make a tackle. Same thing offensively. The more length and size, the more you can reach away from a defender, the more you can keep a tackler away from you with a stiff arm. Same thing with the offensive front. So length and size are foundational to kind of the way that I like to bring in players.
Yeah, and it's all over this roster. I mean, especially when you look at some of the wide receivers. You got Caleb Mitchell, 6'6", out of Texas. You got a couple of wide receivers that are pretty big, and guys on defense, 6'5" outside linebacker, and Brevin Hamblin. I mean, this is a roster that has a lot of length. It's a lot of different positions. So this is kind of a next level for Utah State football. But we'll see how it comes together. Unfortunately, fans won't get to see a whole lot. At least we don't know officially just yet how that's going to work. If there will be open practices, don't know that there will be a spring scrimmage. But a lot of evaluating going on and starting to move forward in this next phase for Utah State football. So if you want to listen to the press conference in its entirety, there's a lot of good stuff in there. We've got the full audio on our podcast feed on 1069thefan.com and on the 1069 The Fan mobile app. And it's about 30 minutes with Bronco Mendenhall. And you can go listen to that and kind of get your own assessment of what he had to say about USU football going into the future. That's going to do it for us tonight here on the Full Court Press. We got a busy night of high school hoops across our family of radio stations. And we'll be video streaming on CashValleyDaily.com. And we'll be back at it again tomorrow. Utah Jazz are in action tonight. But we'll recap a lot of that. Short show tomorrow because of Utah Hockey Club. But we'll, still a lot of things to get through. And I love the interactions. Appreciate all the texts that have come through to keep us honest and remind us if things aren't going right on the feeds. So appreciate all of the real-time feedback on what is or isn't working on the show. That's always appreciated. Until then, have a great night, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
The home for Sports Talk Radio. KLGN Logan. 106.9 FM. 1390 AM. The Fan.